We're moving on now from having the knowledge that we look at the verbs, which are the action words within your unit of competency, and consider them as triggers. They're trigger words as to determining the language literacy and numeracy levels that are required in your training. Okay, so we're going to now work through a task and start building the skill set for that and collect evidence that you can competently identify the trigger words and identify the requirements of your training package. So we're using our case study, John, from our Certificate for Qualification. Now, if you are in the process of gaining that qualification, and this is one unit of that qualification, you'll be familiar with the case study of John, and we build our evidence holistically. And so we're using this as a simulated case study. Now, if you're currently a qualified trainer and assessor, it's important that you use this as modelling the steps, as the process, because I would like you, please, to supply as your final evidence the identified trigger words from the training packages that you work with. So find a unit of competency you train in and submit that unit of competency with the highlighted trigger words and your spiky profile table to actually show me the required levels that you're ascertaining. And please feel free to give me a call and we can workshop together and give you some support in that if you feel you need to. That's fine. So John works for Mike's Bikes. Quick little bit of revision here for some of you doing your qualification currently. Now Mike has instigated the enrolment, so that's already an indicator for a small-sized registered training organisation. If the learner isn't independently enrolling themselves, then there's possibly some reading issues if they're not able to read the online enrolment. There's possibly some writing issues, some communication. We haven't had any direct contact with John yet, so even his oral communication is in question at this stage. And Mike has shared with us that part of the need that the client, Mike, his boss, and the client, John, the learner, actually have is trying to find a trainer and assessor who can work and support John's language literacy and numeracy issues. Okay, so it's already been flagged to us by the client there. Now, there's two objectives that Mike has for John in this training. He doesn't want us to look at training and assessing John in the full license to operate a forklift. He's interested in the first element, which is to improve John's safety performance down there in the warehouse. There's been a couple of near misses with John and the forklifts in the area, so that's the initial level that he's willing to invest in training, and he's going to assess how well we can support John in his language literacy and numeracy, either starting to build his skill set. That's probably not going to be a reasonable ask because there's not a huge amount of money being invested by Mike in this at this stage. But he certainly wants to see if we can, if our assessment resources and learning resources can be flexible there to reach John at his level. So in order for us to know whether we can help or not at this point without investing in an LLN expert, we need to look at the training package and firstly look at those trigger words and see the requirements at that level. So step one, a little bit of revision again, we're going to go to training.gov.au and access the training package. Right, so we've typed in training.gov.au, come up with the home page, and scroll down to the bottom right hand corner. We've deselected, let's remove the tick there, for include superseded data. By removing the tick, we know we're going to only be shown by this website the current training packages. So we'll enter our little keyword there. We'll put forklift. And we'll look at any qualification and unit of competency around that. So license to operate a forklift, because we are experts in the industry, we know that we can find that under units of competency. Just single click, it seems to like. And it will be this one here. License to operate a forklift truck. So we have the summaries up there. We want to scroll down and access the unit of competency as a Word document. Okay, to make things a little bit easier for you, I have inserted some documents there onto your module under the tasks, step 1 and step 3. So step 1 was to open up your version that I've made some adjustments for you on, which was the license to license to operate a forklift truck. You'll see that here on the right hand side. I've just split my screen by hitting the Windows key and my arrow to the right, and then I double clicked on step 3 of your task and opened up the memory jogger there. I then I left my cursor on that document, Windows key, and hit the left button. Just give me a call if you need a hand with that process. Alright, so I've got them on both. I've split the screen so I can work on both documents at once. Another option is to have one open on a smartphone or perhaps an iPad or something, maybe a second computer, and then work on a laptop with this document here on the left. Okay, so now the right hand side, I've just scrolled on down there and I've found the verbs. I've circled the verbs. That's done for you. In the application of the unit, right? So plan is an action word, a doing word, which we call a verb. Conduct, shut down, secure. Now I've then highlighted in yellow anything that's related to the 5 core skills. Okay, so what does the learner have to read? What does the learner have to write? Orally communicate, so speaking, the language, what meaning do they have to make from symbols, and deeper meaning, and also of course the numeracy. So we have a bit of a jogger here on the left hand side to help us with that. Now scrolling down, remember Mike only wanted that very first element, so that's what we've done here. Okay, identified, select, determine, identified. They are the verbs in the sentences. And then highlighted are some phrases that help us point to whether it's going to be reading, writing, speaking, any of those 5 core skills. So within this training package, what does the learner have to listen to and understand? Okay, instructions, safety information, complaints. So listen to, that's more about your language side. So let's have a little look here. Hazards are identified. Now, hazards might be pointed out by by Mike, the boss. So he would have to listen to and understand Mike's instructions, the safety information. So we can definitely say that it's this first one. Okay. So that's what he has to understand. What else? Control measures are identified, consistent with appropriate standards to assure the safety of personnel and equipment. Appropriate standards. So let's go and have a look what the range statement means. See how we've got the bold italicized text? That means we've got more information in the range statement. Appropriate standards may include but not limited to legislation. Oh, okay, these are all reading documents. Okay, so what does the learner have to read? As control measures, all right? What does the learner have to say? Okay, so if they need to communicate any problems, they need to communicate that they understand instructions. Let's have a look. Communication methods are identified according to procedures. Well, even though communication isn't circled, it's not a verb, you know, we know that one of the core skills is oral communication, and because that's bold and italicized, we can go back again to the range statement. So we'll scroll down. There we are. May include but not limited to verbal and non-verbal language, written instructions, signage. So there's a fair bit there. Signs would be meaning, writing for written instructions. You know, verbal would be oral communication, and your non-verbal would be language for understanding meaning. The procedures. Now, procedures is a document, so that would be to do with the reading. Now, we would also then have to apply a workplace context to this. So we would have to go to Mike's OH&S procedures, occupational health and safety procedures, and look to see what methods of communication are used. So we'd look at the signage that's outlined. We'd look at the verbal communication. So, for example, a forklift operator, would they, if they see a hazard, would they only need to verbally identify that to the supervisor? Or would they be required to fill out the written form, or is it the supervisor who has a higher LLN level that would fill out the form? Depends on Mike's needs.